My educational topic for this assignment is Require Students Uniforms. My name is Samantha Gracia, and this is for Education 1301 VO2. Uniforms in schools. When uniforms are required, all students are expected to dress the same, regardless of their styles, preferences, or socioeconomic status. So everyone is expected to dress the same, and well, they don't get to pick, so they all would look the same. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, uniforms are required at about 22% of U.S. public schools. According to a 2020 report, the percentage of public schools that are required uniforms jumped from 12% in 1989 to 2000 school year to 20% in the 2017-2018 school year. School uniforms were required by elementary schools 23%, middle schools 18%, and high schools 10%. So we can see that over time, uniforms became like more mandated. More schools are requiring uniforms, and this is different in all schools, but we can see that the mandate and the requirement for school uniforms has definitely gone up. Next slide. So my research question is, should students wear uniforms? And these are the pictures that I really liked. And yes, students should wear uniforms. And I think instead of cropped it. But yes, students should wear uniforms. And I believe that they should, or some of the reasons why they should that I researched are to help prevent gangs from forming on campus, encourage discipline, help students resist peer pressure to buy trendy clothing so they don't get bullied, and they don't feel like the need, or they don't feel less of because of what they're wearing. And like if someone else is wearing something like it's a brand, and no one's gonna feel bad because they're all gonna dress the same. And then it'll help identify intruders in the school. So since they would all wear the same thing, if someone that doesn't belong there, they would know. And diminish economic and social barriers between students. So like I said, no one would feel bad or sad because they're wearing this clothing, and other students wear brands and stuff like that. They won't feel sad or left out or anything. It would also increase a sense of belonging and school pride. So, like I said, it would be like school pride. Everyone would look the same, and then representing maybe school colors. Statistics, data, and facts. So something that I learned while researching some statistics are that in Long Beach, California, reports of assault and battery in the district's schools decreased by 34%. Assault with a deadly weapon dropped by 50%. Fighting incidents went down by 51%. Sex offenses were cut by 74%. Robbery dropped by 65%. Possession of weapons decreased by 52%. Possession of drugs went down by 69%, and vandalism was lowered by 18%. So we can see here that with the use of uniforms in Long Beach, in these schools, their assaults and all of these things dropped drastically. We can see that even like more than half, some robberies, sex offenses, fighting, it went down by more than half, so that's really good. And something else that I learned was 1 year after Sparks Middle School in Nevada implemented uniforms, data showed that 63% drop in police log reports, and decreases were also noted in gang activities, student fights, graffiti, property damage, and battery. So the same thing in this school in Nevada. They had a 63% drop in all kinds of activities, bad activities, fights, and which is really good. We can see that uniforms are like a good thing in many schools. Some cons on wearing uniforms that I learned while I was researching was that it violates a student's right to freedom of expression. Most students like to express themselves by what they wear, what colors they wear, and by wearing a uniform, they can't do this. They can't express themselves. Make students a target for bullies from other schools because maybe their uniforms are ugly, or they're making fun of them because the other school doesn't wear uniforms and they do, so maybe they all look the same, and it'll be just bullies from other schools because of many reasons. And then another con is that they are a financial burden for poor families. Maybe these uniforms are expensive and they're required, so families have to buy them, and it's a burden for them because sometimes they can't. And then another con is that it is an unfair additional expense for parents. Like I said, it kind of ties in with my last point, and are difficult to enforce in public schools. So many students can rebel because they don't want to wear these uniforms. And yeah, it can be difficult to enforce in many schools. And some statistics that I learned, data and facts, are that I didn't know this, the U.S. Supreme Court stated in Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District 1969 that it can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. So basically what this is saying is that their First Amendment isn't being respected in a way, because the First Amendment is the right for expression, and by implementing school uniforms, they're not allowed to express themselves. So this is what the Supreme Court is saying here, which was really interesting. And then another statistic is that Tony Volk, an associate professor at Brock University, stated, "Overall, there is no evidence in bullying literature that supports a reduction in violence due to school uniforms. It was found that school uniforms increase the number of assaults by 14% per year in the most violent schools." So here we can see that violence actually increases in the most violent schools, which is really interesting. I didn't know this, and it increased by 14%, which is pretty a lot. And then, who supports wearing uniforms? Hillary Clinton supported wearing school uniforms, which she is the former U.S. Secretary of State. She advocated school uniforms as a way to help students focus on learning. And according to a national survey, over 90% of U.S. school leaders believe in school uniforms. So this was interesting to read and to know that many people, you can see that many people are or support wearing uniforms, which is really interesting to read and to know. Who does not support wearing uniforms? Well, here a lot of students and parents do not support school uniforms, and I was recently in school, and in my high school we didn't wear uniforms, so we were allowed to wear whatever we wanted. And I know I had some friends who wanted school uniforms and I had some who didn't. So there I was able to know and to see that we all think differently, and some are for it and some are against it. So some students are for it and against it, and based off on what I learned and read, there's also some parents who are for it and against it because, like I said, some parents cannot afford it and some can't. Some think it's better for their kids' safety, and so yeah. When it comes to school uniforms, 50% of people are for uniforms and 50% of people are against uniforms. So here, there's always going to be a dilemma, and no one will ever be 100% on the same page. Everyone thinks differently, and yeah, so that's that. And the current status across the US and Texas is, well, the latest data from the National Center for Education Statistics finds 20% of schools in the United States requires school uniforms. It is up 8% since 2000. So that was from the years 2017 and 2018. So it definitely went up. So like I said, it now it's become like more required school uniforms, and maybe because they've seen that school uniforms actually do work for them and for their school. So here, primary school uniform with school uniform policies is 23%, middle schools is 18%, and high schools is 10%, like I mentioned before. There is obviously more uniforms in an elementary school than in middle school. And now that I've read this, that high schools have 10%, it makes sense because my high school did not require school uniforms, and I know of a lot of schools that don't. And in middle school, I did wear a uniform, so I know that it's more in middle schools and in elementary schools than in high schools. So my opinion on school uniforms is that I think uniforms should be enforced in schools because I believe it would be the best thing for everyone, for administrators, for students, for just everyone, because on the safety side, when you look at it, it is best. Well, in my opinion. Teachers and administrators would be able to tell apart the students, what grade levels, and they would know if there was ever an intruder. No student will feel less than others based on their clothing because everyone would wear the same thing, which is very important. There would also be less bullying due to the students' clothing. It would keep students focused on their education and not on their clothes, which I was in school, so I've seen this. Many students are like, really, what is the word? More like show offs, and this would decrease that. Like, they wouldn't be able to show off much because they're all wearing the same thing, and they would focus more on their education and on their schoolwork and their grades. And I think there would be a drastic change in their grades and everything like that. So that's my opinion. I believe schools should enforce uniforms. And these are my sources. I used 4 resources to help me figure out my research question, and thank you everyone for watching my presentation, and have a great day.